Trombonist, producer, composer Clifton Anderson makes a rare New York club date with his sextet on Friday, May 15th at 8:30 at the Iridium. Clifton Anderson has shared the stage and studio with a diverse array of wonderful artists, from his long-running tenure with his uncle Sonny Rollins to McCoy Tyner, Dizzy Gillespie, as well as pop stars Stevie Wonder and Keith Richards. Clifton Anderson, great to see you.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Doug. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. All right, so before we go to this, we have to go back to when you were 7 years old because I love history. And
Okay.
so, Clifton, you got your first trombone from your uncle Sonny Rollins at the age of 7. Can you take us back to that moment? How much do you remember about that?
Well, I just remember getting the horn and that my mother told me that my uncle got me the horn. My mother had taken me to a movie, The Music Man, and there was a scene in that movie with 76 trombones led the big parade, and that kind of freaked me out when I saw that. And I told, and I come from a musical family, so as children, everybody was, we had to play an instrument, we had to learn something, even if it wasn't going to be like a professional thing. My parents had always asked me, what instrument do you want to play? And I didn't know. But when I saw that movie, I said, okay, Ma, that's what I want to play. I want to play that. So she told Sonny, and Sonny got me my first instrument, my first trombone. And uh, I don't think he didn't hand it to me. I think he got it to my mother. And then she told me, oh, your uncle bought you this horn, and so you have to really learn how to play it. But when at that age, I was, fractured doing all kinds of things. So I mean, I fooled around with it, but she took me to a music school, uh, and the head of the music school wanted to come in and hear all the students that were trying to start to take lessons. And when he heard me blow the trombone, he said to my mother, he said, you have to make sure that he keeps playing. He can get a really nice sound out of that instrument. And most kids at his age can't get that kind of sound. So that's really important. You should make sure that he stays with it. And so, but I liked it. I fooled around with some other instruments. I tried to play the saxophone, but that gave me headaches. And I had a little drum set, but that I was just banging on the drum set, so I was driving everybody crazy. So I had to stop doing that. But I stuck with the trombone, and very grateful that that Sonny got me that first instrument.
So, isn't it wonderful that your music teacher at the time picked up on this wonderful tone that you've had with the trombone from a very early age, and that's what you're known for. You're known for your tone and storytelling with this instrument. So back then, you were a natural, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. I was always, as I said, I have like music in my DNA, in my family. My father was a organist and choir director, and my mother was a excellent singer, contralto. And of course, Sonny, in the family. And my other uncle was could have been a concert violinist also. So I mean, we have a lot of music in the family. When I was younger, I was always musically inclined, and as I started going into junior high school and stuff, I was always like the best little student, playing. And I tell this story sometimes, I got into the Fiorello LaGuardia High School of Music and Art. And when I first went in, the first day that I walked in there, I thought, okay, I'm going to go into school and take over, and do all this kind of stuff. And I heard a tuba player playing, and I never heard a tuba sound like this before. So I went up on the fifth floor of that old castle building, and I walked down the hallway. I followed the sound, and the practice room has a little window. So I looked through the door, and the guys who was playing this tuba, his back was to me, but I could see the music, and the music looked like flypaper. I didn't know what it was that he was reading. So I knocked on the door, and he stopped playing. He turned around, and I introduced myself to him, and I said, "Man, what are you playing on the tuba, what is that? I never heard anything like that on tuba. He said, oh, these are the Dante violin concertos. I said, you're playing violin concertos on the tuba? That was the very first guy that I met the very first day going to music and arts. So, I mean, that humbled me immediately.
Did
And
he
I
be did
realized,
he become famous?
oh, he was a prodigy. He was a soloist with the New York Philharmonic at 14 years old. His name was Carlton Green. He went on to become the tubist for the La Scala Opera House in Italy. And I don't know what happened to Carlton. He ran into some problems. Um, so I don't know really whatever happened to him. But he was so advanced that this a lot of the teachers in the school let him run the classes, and the ensembles, you know.
Wow.
But that's the first guy that I met there. And of course, that school, music and art, has a history, many, 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 many great musicians that a lot of the listeners would probably know. Nat Adderley Jr. was in there. He was getting ready to graduate when I was coming in, along with Buddy Williams, people like that. Marcus Miller and Omar Hakim were coming in when I left. They were coming in as I was leaving, and I was there with the great Steve Jordan and Ray Chu, and but I mean we can go on. There was the whole long list of great musicians that are very at the top of the business today. That are out here performing.
You mentioned Steve Jordan. You have a project you're working with him on Verve's 70th anniversary celebration. So you and Steve really go way back.
Oh yeah, we go back before music and art. Actually, we we were in. They used to have these orchestras in each borough, the borough-wide orchestras, and they were supposed to be like the best young kids in each borough in junior high schools. Not even in elementary to junior high schools. So I was in the Bronx Borough-wide with Steve, and we first met there. I think I was like about 10 years old. You know,
Hmm.
um, we were around 10, 11 years old when we were in there. And, Steve was so little. He was this little guy. He was playing the timpanis, and you could barely see him behind the timpanis. But it was a great experience for us, and we became dear friends from that point forward. We both went to music and art. Steve kind of jumped out there before everybody else. And as a result of my relationship with him, he introduced me to Hubert Laws, and he was playing with Hubert Laws and Michael Urbaniak, the violinist that passed not too long ago. And I introduced him to, well, I didn't introduce him to Sonny because he was hanging around a studio downtown called Bill's. And Sonny used to rehearse in there. And Sonny asked me one day, this young guy that's down there, drummer. He said he knows you. So I said, yeah, Sonny, that's Steve. I said he could play. And not too much longer, Sonny hired him, and he started working with Sonny. So that Steve and I go way back, and he's one of the really dear friends of mine and one of the great musicians in this time that we have. Producer also.
You have an event with him coming up at Pier 84 on July 1st. But let's talk about the Iridium event on May 15th in your sextet. What do you want to tell us about that?
Well, we're inviting everybody to come to that performance. I played at the Iridium a few times several years back, and I saw that they were kind of reconstituting their jazz series and everything in there. So I wanted to, I liked the room when I played in there before, so I wanted to try to come back. I haven't performed in any major New York club for a while, which is kind of been, that's on me, more so than anything. But I had an opportunity to come into the Iridium, so I wanted to bring my sextet in there. We've been together a while now. Belden Bullock, Steve Johns, Antoine Roney, Victor Cien, and my man Edsel Gomez has been with me, but he's not going to be on this one. We're going to have Hector Martignon playing the piano on this one. And so we're going to, my music, as you may know, is very melodic, very lyrical, I try to write material that it will be long lasting, and that's what you'll hear when you come down. We have that show on Friday, May 15th. It's at I think 8:30, and it's only one show. So we're really trying to hype that to make sure that everybody comes to that because the next show at the pier is not for another month or so, too. So this one is very important. We'd like to have a good turnout, and we have some great music for the people to hear. And if you like original material that's in the tradition of beautiful melodies and really swinging music. We play a variety of things, though. It's not just all 4/4, swing. It's there's a variety of music that we present, and our audiences, love what we do. So we hope everybody comes out. You know.
Speaking of melody, you've said in the past that learning about melodies was something that Sonny has always taught you from working with him and growing up too.
Well, that's always been a major component. I mean, if you think about all those people that we love so much that have got us involved in this music, going back, they're all associated with great melodies, many of which they wrote themselves, and some that have been just standards that were in the repertoire, So Sonny told me to concentrate on my own music. That what we're supposed to be doing out here is contributing something to the pop. Contributing our music in the way our elders the people that have come before us have done. So when you think of all these great tunes, like the Round Midnights and anything Benny Golson wrote. I mean, all these things have really strong melodies, and our purpose as artists is to try to emulate that. That's part of the process of the art. So that's what Sonny always told me to be cognizant of and to deal with. That's what to deal with.
You've
Yeah.
worked with so many great artists, but since we just lost him last year, local great Andy Bay delivered the title track, one of his final recordings, Been Down This Road Before. It's an
Yeah.
amazing tune.
Yeah.
When losing Andy last year, how did that hit you?
I knew that Andy was his health hadn't been 100% for a while. He was, in fact, when we recorded that track, it was really towards the end of COVID, actually. And when I called him up and I asked him, I knew, that he would be very apprehensive about doing anything in that environment during that period. But he told me, he said, well, can you send me the music, send me the track, and I said, well, I don't have the music right now, but I'll send you the lyrics so you can see, what, I give you the intent of what the piece is supposed to be about. And he called me right back after he looked at the lyrics. He said, I want to do this, you know. And so I said, oh man, that's great, So we went in the studio. It had to be very, very how can I say, a prescribed setting, where we were just us in the studio, because it was very difficult at that time. COVID was still active, and I picked him up, took him to the studio, brought him home, and we had a great session. And I mean, he was 80 years old when he sang that. He sounded like he was about 30 years old. You know, he was a tremendous, I think, really, he was never given his proper due as an artist, as many have not been given, but he in particular was such a great artist, unique sound. And he was the right person because he's a storyteller. I mean, you can hear in his voice and the timbre and the quality of his voice and his delivery that he's a storyteller. And that's the kind of singer that I needed for that track.
Yeah.
and he delivered, so I was very, I was sad, in a way to hear that he had moved on, but I kind of, knew that the time was coming soon, with him. And I guess, as we all hope, he's in a better place than he was while he was here. And I was
That,
I'm very honored to have him on that track as one of the last things. I think it probably was the last recording that he did, you know.
been down this road before. It has really received a lot of acclaim through the years. Sonny Says, tell us about that tune.
Well, Sonny Says is a tribute for Sonny. And Sonny would always tell me, practice your two fives, those are the pillars of modern jazz, you know. And Sonny would not tell me, my friends would always say, "Oh man, you playing with Sonny. Sonny's probably showing you all this kind of stuff." Sonny would show me things on the bandstand in the activity of what we were doing. He would never sit down with me or say to me, "Oh, Clifton, you could do this, play this over this, or do this so you can do that." No, it never happened that way. It would happen, we'd be on the stage in the middle of a show, and he might turn to me and look at me and play something. And of course, I many times I couldn't figure out what it was he was playing when he did it. I'd have to go back and listen, maybe if we recorded something, listen to it and say, "Oh, that's what that was." But he would play it, and then he'd walk over, go to the other side of the stage, continue a solo, and then he'd come back and he'd look at me and he'd play it again, you know. And so that was the kind of instruction that I used to get, you know. Those are the lessons that I would receive amongst many, many others from him. So, so I had
Uh,
to pay tribute to him on that song that has a lot of two fives and a 2/5 movement in it. So that's what Sonny says.
and speaking of Sonny Says, just about everybody who talks about Sonny in an interview will go into his voice, just like you did, right? It's one of the most recognizable, unique, and wonderful voices we've ever had, not only in jazz, but in general.
Well, very quick, I'll just tell you a very quick story. I used to be able to imitate his voice much better than I can do now. But years ago, I was on Milestone, my very first recording on Milestone, and Sonny was on that label. And it was a fantasy label, was the parent company. And so they were out in California. So I would call up occasionally because I had his voice down so well. I would occasionally call up the record label, and the receptionist, she would answer the phone, and I would tell, I forget her name may have been Kathy or something. I can't remember her name right now, but I would say like, "Oh, Kathy, yeah, this is Sonny. Is Ralph Caffel around?" And she would say, "Oh, Sonny, Sonny, Sonny." She'd get all excited and stuff. And so I said, "Well, I just want to talk to him. I want to let him know that I don't like the way that they're treating my nephew. They're not promoting his record properly." Yeah.
Oh my.
so,
Oh, she
so
got
she would
all
say,
worked
"Oh,
up, I
Sonny,"
bet.
she said, "Oh, Sonny, I'm so, oh, well, let me see if I can find Ralph." And so I'd have to grab her before she actually went to go into it. And I told, I said, "No, no, Kathy, this is Clifton. I'm only fooling around."
I
But I used
I
to have a lot of people, I used to, trick a lot of people that way.
I love it. Another thing that I love is what we do music, your new label. Some things never change. It came out in 2023.
Mhm.
That's a really hip tune.
Yeah, and now to me, it's just like a blues. It's not a blues, but it's like a blues. It's coming out of the blues. And it's a nod to our experiences as human beings. We keep seeming to regurgitate stuff, that doesn't work, or that is problematic, but we do it anyway. And so that's a nod to that kind of idea. Some things just never seem to change. And I had the great Ray Parker Jr. on there with me, and Steve Jordan, and a host of other really fine musicians, John Adams and who was on the Russell Blake, the great Russell Blake was on there with me, and Victor CN. So, we put it together, and of course, the one and only Kenny Garrett. Um, and that record has not gotten. It's funny that you bring it up because after I did it, I wasn't. I'm an independent artist, so after I did it, I didn't have the opportunity actually to really promote the record. So it's been kind of sitting out there in the ether. It's kind of, it's out there, but it's not. It hasn't gotten any promotion. So I'm thinking about really kind of reissue. I don't know if you could say reissuing it, but putting, like doing a whole promo behind it soon, you know.
I think that would be a great idea because it
Yeah.
it is a very, as I mentioned, a very hip tune. It's a radio friendly tune.
Yeah.
It's got all the elements you need. It's just a good song.
Oh, okay. I'm
You
really
know,
glad you like it.
I mean,
I
just
mean,
face it.
we dug it, we enjoyed doing it.
Another artist that I love dearly that you have worked with is Monty Alexander.
Oh, yes, my man. Yeah.
Tell us a
Commander
little bit
Monty.
about working with Monty.
Well, Monty, I first met Monty through Sonny. We did a boat ride around Manhattan. I don't remember what year this was. It was quite some time ago. And the piano player who I think he couldn't make that show for whatever reason, whoever was playing piano at the time, and Sonny had called Monty to come in and play. And we kicked it off. And he's his Jamaican background. My father was born in Jamaica. So we started, even though I was born here, my parents are Caribbean background. But Monty and I just hit it off right away, and I just loved his playing. I love everything about his playing. And since and he likes what I do. He likes my writing, and he likes where I'm coming from, musically. So I've been very fortunate to be able to get him on several recordings, that I've done throughout the years. And we remain really tight, very, very tight. And we're going to do more work, as time goes by, But he's one of my favorites, all time favorites. And he's got a lot of great story. He's a lot of Monty is one of the guys that's still here with us that has a lot of history.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people don't really understand the importance of that, of when you hear a musician playing like him, that's that history that's coming through that music. And his whole background. He told me that he and Bob Cranshaw and Al Foster used to play at the Playboy Club downtown, and that's how they really got. And so when I heard that, I said, "Oh, I got to get the three you guys together." And I
Unbelievable.
did that. They played on my very first recording. And so I mean, those kind of relationships, Al Foster I was very tight with, also, Monty, and of course Bob was a major mentor of mine, Bob Cranshaw. So
Yeah,
um,
when I had the pleasure of hosting an evening with Monty Alexander at Yamaha Studios, and he was talking about um, being in the club, and there's Sarah Vaughan coming in with her,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
talking about, of course, Frank Sinatra, and
yeah,
talking about Louis Armstrong.
that's right.
And he has all these tremendous boxing stories that he has shared on WBGO through Sports Jam through the years. He is such a character. You mentioned writing.
Yeah.
Right now, what's going on in your mind? What do you want to write about? There's so much happening in this world right now, good and bad. What's going through your mind, and what are you working on?
Well, I have a lot. I have a lot of music that I haven't even recorded yet, been able to record yet. But I'm constantly, impacted by the environment, my environment. So there are things that I have in my head. I hear music all the time, so there are things that I'm hearing, but there are different combinations of instruments. I want to get into some things with strings, you know. My other half, my dear other half, Neoka Workman, who is the daughter of the great Reggie Workman, is a cellist, a exceptional cellist, and she has a few really beautiful compositions, and so I want to I have a project in mind to do one of her compositions with strings, and I want to do that soon, as soon as possible if I can, and just get back in the studio, record some new material. It's difficult for me because I don't like to get into a contract with any major label that I don't have control of my music. And so I have to really do everything myself, finance it, produce it, promote it, get it out there myself, which requires money.
Yeah.
So, I have to wait until I can put something together and just have the whole package together to be able to do it through the record label, what we do, you
Yeah,
know.
as you mentioned, that's not easy these days. Reggie Workman, Barry Harris, some of the people that you've trained with, you mentioned. What do those two individuals, when you think about how they've changed you in any way, what have they taught you that you take with you every day?
Yeah, well, Reggie, I got my introduction to Reggie happened when I was very young. I was about 15 years old, and I found out that he had a program going on in Brooklyn at a place called the Muse. And I started going out there. My parents didn't know that I was going, taking my horn and getting on the subway and riding to Brooklyn, but I would go out there and I would hang out with many times I didn't, most of the time I didn't play. I was just hanging out because I was fascinated with these. There were a lot of great musicians that were in his band that rehearsed out there, people like Sonny Fortune and I would see, many Cecil Bridgewater, all these people were out there. Mario Rivera, they were, a lot. I met Ricky Ford out there, and I finally got an opportunity to play a few times with that band. And I sat next to the first trombone player that I sat next to that was a veteran trombonist out here was Kiani Zawadi. And Kiani started showing me, how to phrase and do different things. There was also another fine trombonist named Charles Stevens that used to be around years ago who played with Lionel Hampton, and I believe he did stuff with the Count Basie Orchestra also. But he was there, and so a lot of these guys were like around, and I just kind of planted myself around there with Reggie, watching how he would conduct the band and the different things that they would do, and just like a sponge. That was my whole approach to being around my elders. I just wanted to be a sponge and just pick up whatever I could pick up, and I think it served me very well. People like Reggie Workman and Barry Harris also. Barry Harris had the cultural center down on 8th Avenue, and I used to be down there all the time. And saw and met many, many great musicians. I met Clifford Jordan down there. Ended up working with him briefly, you know. But there was like Bucky Thorpe, a lot of people names that a lot of people would not know. Great musicians, C Sharp, um, Frank Foster used to come through a lot, and I ended up working with him. Uh, there were just a many, many, many great musicians that would come through that space. If you were just hanging out down there, you'd see all these great people. You know.
You talked about Monty being, somebody with all these stories. You're a bridge. You're a bridge to the greats of this music, and some we've lost, and some are still here.
Well, yeah, I realize that I am. I was very young. The thing is that my whole history, I kind of got into things very, very young. I was younger than most of the people around me because I skipped grades in school. So, I went to Stony Brook. I was 15 years old when I went to Stony Brook my first year of college, and I turned 16 like later in that year. So I was younger. I was always like a younger guy around older people, but I've always had a certain level of respect and admiration for elders, which is something that I got through hanging around them, understanding that they've been on this planet longer, a lot longer than I have. They have more information. They can be very helpful in in guiding and directing you. So I would just, made myself available always to my elders, and as a result, I was around and got a chance to play with many, many, many great musicians. They influenced me. Milt Jackson came to my first record date, scared the mess out of me because it was supposed to be a closed date. And I saw somebody in the booth hanging out. I didn't. I sound like who is that in there? Nobody's supposed to be in here. And we're cutting the tune, and so Bob, we took a break for a second, and so Bob Cranshaw said, "Oh yeah, that's Bags is over there." So I said, "Bags?" I said, Milt Jackson. He said, "Yeah, I told him you were. I told him we were cutting today, so he came." I couldn't play after that. We had to take a real break, but he became very supportive of me also, and he heard me come. I played in Japan, first time going to Japan. He came to the club. He and Percy Heath and Mickey Roker
Hmm.
came to a famous club in Osaka that I was playing at, and he was very supportive. He realized that I was having trouble with the drummer on that show, and because it was a pickup band there, and I asked Mickey Roker to come in to sit in for a minute, and he came and sat in, and things really elevated at that point. But all those guys, I got a chance to play with and to work with, and some that I didn't get a chance to work with, but I would have loved to have been with. But I got a chance to be around and to play and to befriend a lot of important people that and every time I play, my notes I hope represent all of them in some kind of way, and in my music also,
That's
you
a
know.
great message, though, when you think about it, Clifton, because respecting your elders, uh, I think jazz artists probably do that better than many people. But I'm talking about just in general. We need more respect for those who came before us. I'm
Yes,
not just talking music. I'm just talking life in
in general.
general, right? We don't treat our seniors well in this country. It doesn't seem like, there's always exceptions, but younger kids, when I'm talking to students in school, and I'll say, when's the last time you spoke to your grandmother or grandfather? And it doesn't seem like there's always that great connection or respect for those. I mean, do you feel that as well?
Well, definitely, definitely, and especially when you travel to other countries and see how they respect their elders. They look out for their elders, and do the best that they can. I always thought it was funny in the United States that we got into this trend when people get a certain age, you just send them off to some kind of a assisted living home or something like this. Of course, sometimes that's the only thing that can happen financially for a family. But I always like my grandfather, Sonny's father, who was very essential in raising my sister and I. He lived with us for the entire time for his entire time until he had to be hospitalized. He was here, and that was always um, in the community out of Harlem and that existed. That was always the case in those days. That your older family members just stayed with. So it became a thing I think in this country that changed, and as a result of what you're saying, the lack of value that we put towards the people that are older, and you see it also. I mean, it's happening now. I see it in the music industry. I see that there's a whole push to have younger musicians everywhere, and the guys who are really holding the standard of this music, are barely working. So that I mean that's part of that whole kind of consciousness that's taking place. And it's, unfortunately, it's a result of what's happening in the broader picture of this country. You know, hopefully it can change, but I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I certainly hope so at some point. But it's a tribute to you because, as you mentioned, all the notes that come out of your trombone, the sound is all based on what you've learned and all the experiences that you've had and all the great artists that you've played with, whether it be Sonny or all the other people that we've mentioned here today. Um, Sonny's getting up there,
Yes, he is. Yeah.
and how's he doing?
Well, he's doing okay. He's going to be 96 this year. So I mean, at that age, he's comfortable in his home. You know, and he's at that age. I can just say he's okay. He's doing better than I think many at his age. Of course, he had a better at a certain point. He started being more health conscious, and I think that has helped him get through whatever health issues existed for people of that age. You know, he's been able to get through things. One of the issues that prevented him from performing anymore was a disease that he was diagnosed with that most people, almost all, but most people that are diagnosed with that particular disease are given 5 to 7 years to live.
Mm.
And that's the end of that. And he was diagnosed with that disease maybe in 2009, 2010, something like that, you know. So he's made it through. I mean, due to his focus on his health from an earlier point. So he's doing, to answer your question, he's doing okay, as best as we could be expected, at 96 or soon to
Hmm.
be 96,
Well,
you
we
know.
wish him the best moving forward, the health, and certainly the best for you as you have this great gig coming up on Friday, May 15th, 8:30 p.m. at Iridium. Trombonist Clifton Anderson and his sextet. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I really appreciate you know, your respect for not only the music, but those who have come before you and those you're playing with now. It's refreshing and it's something that you know I truly love hearing about. So Clifton, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Doug. It's been a pleasure for me as well.